Okay, so today we're diving into something we all navigate daily, often without really, thinking much about the words we use for it. It's this fascinating world of English language euphemisms for that most basic human activity, defecation, specifically across the 20th and 21st centuries.
It really is remarkable, isn't it? For something so universal, we've developed this huge range of ways to talk around it. It points to that inherent taboo, which is sparked this incredibly creative linguistic response, the euphemism.
Absolutely. And for this deep dive, we've looked at, quite a range of sources: linguistic surveys, dictionaries, tracing origins, slang guides, even pop culture analysis.
Yeah.
And what they show is this incredible spectrum. You've got the really polite, almost clinical terms.
Right, like from a doctor.
All the way to, wild slang you hear online or with friends. And it's everywhere English is spoken, basically. UK, US, Canada, Australia, Ireland.
Mm-hmm. And it's not just that we avoid saying it directly. What's really fascinating is what these word choices tell us about social norms, politeness strategies, even our sense of humor. So we're going to look at where these terms came from, how they differ regionally, how they've changed over time, and sort of the bigger social picture behind it all.
Right. So our mission today is to get down to, the bottom of it, you could say. Why do we English speakers tiptoe around this fundamental thing and explore the really creative, often funny language we use instead? Okay, let's unpack this. Why all the linguistic acrobatics around something so basic?
Well, at its core, it connects to this linguistic idea of face. Think of face as like your public image, your social standing.
Okay.
And talking directly about bodily functions, especially defecation, well, it can be seen as embarrassing or offensive. It sort of threatens your face and the comfort of people around you. It's private stuff.
Right, keeping things socially smooth. So how do we manage that with language? What are the strategies?
There are a few main ones. Using those formal clinical terms is one. They sound detached, less visceral.
Uh-huh.
Then there's indirectness, referring to the place, like the bathroom or the need itself, without naming the act. And, of course, all the playful metaphors and slang terms. They lighten the mood, disguise the topic.
Yeah, it's like constantly rounding off the sharp edges. And our sources mention this euphemism cycle or treadmill. What's that about?
Right, the euphemism treadmill. Basically, a euphemism can become so strongly associated with the taboo thing it's hiding that it starts to feel too direct or even a bit crude itself. So then you need a new, even softer euphemism to replace it.
Like a never-ending cycle.
Exactly. Toilet is the classic example. It actually started as a euphemism back in the 18th century, from the French toilette, meaning a dressing room. It was refined.
Didn't know that.
But by the 20th century, toilet itself often felt too blunt for polite company, which is why terms like bathroom, restroom, washroom became more popular as, gentler options.
So we're always inventing new ways to stay polite. Now, the survey we looked at distinguishes orthophonisms, euphemisms, and dysphemisms. Can you break those down?
Sure. Orthophonisms are the neutral, factual terms. Think defecate, bowel movement.
Yeah.
Direct, but impersonal, often Latin-based.
Wait a minute.
Euphemisms, as we've said, are the polite dodges, relieve oneself, go number 2. And dysphemisms are the opposite, deliberately crude or offensive, like take a shit.
Right.
But what's really interesting is how a word can shift between these categories over time as attitudes change.
And that leads to something really surprising one source mentioned about the word shit itself. The idea that it might have started as a euphemism, that kind of blew my mind.
It's a fascinating theory, though, a bit speculative. The idea comes from a Proto-Indo-European root, sand, believed to mean to cut off or separate.
Okay.
So the theory goes that shit might have originally been a milder, maybe metaphorical way to talk about separating waste from the body.
Wow. That's a long way from how we use it now.
Exactly. It definitely lost any polite veneer it might have had.
Yeah.
But it shows how language evolves, how words can become taboo, and why we constantly need that euphemism treadmill.
Okay, so let's dive into some of the specific polite and clinical terms that have been common since the early 1900s. Relieve oneself seems like a good starting point.
Yes, relieve oneself. It's incredibly durable, very polite. Its strength is its vagueness, right? It doesn't specify urine or feces, just relief. It goes back to Victorian times and was standard polite phrasing for much of the 20th century. Even a 1919 dictionary lists it with that dual meaning. It's all about softening the taboo by being ambiguous.
And another one you still hear, maybe with a little wink sometimes, is answer the call of nature.
Right. That one personifies the urge, doesn't it? Nature is calling. Records show it was around by the 1920s and the OVD by 1926. It was polite enough for mixed company mid-century, had that slight, gentle, humorous feel.
And people still say nature calls, the shorter version.
Exactly. Still very much in use.
Now, moving to something more coded. The numbers. Noah and Noah 2. I definitely learned those as a kid.
Ah, yes, the numerical system. Seems to have started in 19th century nurseries or schools, a way to, sanitize talk about bodily functions around children.
Makes sense.
And number 2, specifically for defecation, was in slang dictionaries by 1902, defined as evacuation. It shows how early we teach kids these social codes.
And adults use it too, right? Going number 2. It's light, inoffensive.
Totally. Almost universally understood across the Anglophone world, even if the exact origin story is a bit fuzzy.
Okay, let's talk location. Go to the bathroom, use the restroom, use the washroom. These seem very tied to place geographically.
They are. These are metonymic, naming the place instead of the act.
Yeah.
Bathroom and the Canadian favorite washroom became standard polite terms in North America.
Right.
Restroom in the U.S. originally meant more like a public lounge with toilets, but now it's just a common polite term for the toilet itself.
Decency through obscurity, as one source put it.
Precisely. Mention washing, resting, bathing.
Yeah.
Anything but the main event. Though, of course, they become so common, they lose some of that original euphemistic power.
How does that compare to, say, British English?
Well, British English traditionally favored lavatory, from Latin, place for washing, or just toilet. Although, interestingly, in some upper-class circles mid-century, toilet was seen as a bit common.
Oh, really?
Yeah, etiquette guides sometimes suggested lavatory or loo. Loo popped up early 20th century, maybe from French loo. Now, loo is perfectly normal, polite, everyday British usage.
And speaking of Britishisms, spend a penny. Love the story behind that.
It's a great one. Directly linked to those old pay toilets, especially for women. Late 19th, early 20th century, you literally put a penny in the slot.
So practical.
It became this common kind of witty way to say you needed the loo, used widely mid-century. And even though pay toilets aren't the norm now, you still hear it sometimes in the UK, often humorously or nostalgically.
Another classic, maybe more associated with women historically, is powder one's nose.
Yes, another quite indirect one, used in both Britain and America, mostly by women from the early 20th century. Just gonna powder my nose. It cleverly links needing the toilet with a socially okay feminine activity makeup.
Right, covering the real reason.
Shows those gender and class nuances in mid-century language. And powder room comes from this too, for a small guest bathroom.
Less common now, maybe, but people still know what it means.
Exactly. Still a cultural reference.
Then we have the more clinical side. Bowel movement,
yeah.
stool, very detached.
That's the point, really. In medical settings, formal language neutralizes the vulgarity. Have a bowel movement, or BM, became standard medical talk in the 19th century, still is. Movement itself is sanitized. Move one's bowels is the more formal version. And stool, now a standard clinical term for feces, actually started euphemistically too.
How so?
Going to stool meant using a commode, a chair-like toilet. Over time, stool just became associated with the product, not the furniture.
Fascinating how words shift like that.
Isn't it?
And even more technical sounding, evacuate the bowels. Sounds very formal.
It is highly clinical. You find it in medical texts, scientific papers, maybe older official documents from the 19th century on. Evacuate to empty out is totally impersonal. No warmth, no humor.
Just the facts.
Exactly. It sits somewhere between euphemism and just neutral jargon.
So looking back at the 20th century, there was this clear preference for these more formal, indirect terms, especially in certain social circles and writing.
Definitely. Reflects those strong social taboos around the body.
And even if we're maybe a bit more casual now, day to day.
These polite forms are still what you reach for in formal situations or mixed company. It's about decorum.
And regionally, it's striking bathroom, restroom, washroom versus toilet loo. Plus the colloquial ones like Aussie Dunny or Irish the Jacks.
Yeah, the basic strategies are similar. Refer to the place, use vague terms, but the specific words really vary.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. What about bureaucratic language? Institutions seem to have their own coded ways of talking about this.
They certainly do. Bureaucratic contexts often create their own jargon. Again, it's about formality, avoiding offense in records. Hospitals, nursing homes you see, bowel movement, void, soil oneself for incontinence. Very clinical.
Right.
Prisons, the military might use latrine visit, waste elimination.
Yeah.
And sometimes you get dark humor too, like that supposed Vietnam-era soldier term, JHQ, for needing to dig a latrine.
And even the corporate world gets in on it. Bio break, Comfort break sounds very office-y.
It does. Bio break seems more modern, maybe more American techie contexts. For a quick restroom trip during meetings.
Okay.
In the UK, maybe more likely to hear comfort break on an agenda, just acknowledges the need without being explicit.
Our research even found that historical example. The groom of the stool in Tudor England. What a title.
Isn't it amazing? The stool, there's definitely a euphemism for the commode or the act itself. Shows how even royal dignity required euphemism way back then.
A modern version might be how NASA talks about it.
Exactly. Waste management systems, voiding solid waste, highly technical scientific language covering a very basic human need. Professional veneer.
All right, now for the really fun part, I think. Slang and humorous euphemisms. This is where the creativity really shines, especially later in the 20th and into the 21st century.
Oh, absolutely. Beyond politeness and bureaucracy, this is where English speakers get incredibly inventive. It ranges from, silly terms for kids to some outrageous metaphors meant purely for laughs.
Let's look back at some mid-20th century foundations. Explicit talk was rarer then. Slang may be more confined to male groups or comedy.
Generally, yes. Take a dump and take a crap seem like key phrases from that era.
Right. Take a dump. Where does that take construction come from?
It's interesting. Linguists aren't totally sure. Maybe from taking time or making an effort to do it. Take a dump seems North American, mid-20th century, gaining ground by the 70s. It's blunt, but maybe less harsh than take a shit. Widely used now.
And take crap or have a crap.
Uses crap, which itself changed over time. Started polite in the 19th century, became a mild vulgarism by the mid-late 20th. By then, crap was informal but fairly neutral. Less childish than poo, not as strong as shit.
And the British had shoot a bunny. That's quite different.
Yes. A more lighthearted, now pretty obscure one. Shoot a bunny or shoot a rabbit.
And we can't forget UK rhyming slang, Tom Tit.
A classic. Rhymes with shit. Cockney origin, 19th century, used humorously through the 20th. Off for a Tom Tit.
Were there others?
Yeah, less common ones like Joe Hooker, later maybe Eartha Kitt. More for jokes than everyday avoidance, but shows that playful spirit.
Okay, so late 20th century, pop culture opens up and boom, euphemism explosion.
Seems that way. From the 70s to 90s, more willingness to joke about taboo stuff in comedies, movies, TV really fueled this wave of creative euphemisms, often American slang spread by media and then the internet.
We start seeing lots of metaphors about dropping or depositing things. Drop a load, drop a log.
Drop one. They play on that idea of unloading, releasing. Drop a log paints a very vivid picture, doesn't it?
It does. And then the really visual one, drop the kids off at the pool.
That one's great. Kids for feces, pool for the toilet water. Seems late 20th century, maybe college slang originally. Yeah. Spread widely, probably because it's so visually funny and avoids directness completely.
And the variation, drop the Browns off at the Super Bowl.
Yeah, that's a later U.S. one, internet age. Adds that extra layer with the football team pun. Very playful.
Then there's construction imagery. Pinch a loaf. That one got famous.
It did, largely thanks to the Shawshank Redemption, though the phrase was around before that, probably 90s American slang.
What's the imagery there?
Like pinching off dough, forming the turd. There's an older related phrase, pinch one off, meaning to sever it.
Ah, okay. And other construction ones.
Lay brick or lay cable. More UK Australia. Evokes producing something long and solid. And the jokey American, build a log cabin. All about output, production, with the humorous twist.
The violent or military ones always seem darkly funny. Bomb the bowl.
Yeah. Framing it as aggression, probably for comedic hyperbole, the toilet is the target.
Carpet bombing sounds messy.
Exactly. Vividly suggests that. Blow mud, especially for diarrhea, is almost explosive.
Yeah.
Even drop a bomb can work. Using war imagery for taboo stuff is pretty common in slang. Exaggerates it for humor. Fire a torpedo is another one.
And animal nature references are always there. See a man about a horse dog.
A real classic excuse. Started 19th century for sneaking off for any reason. By mid-20th century, it was often understood as needing the toilet, especially UK men, often tongue-in-cheek.
A bit mysterious.
Yeah. Then you have the opposite. The proverb does a bear shit in the woods, uses the direct word to stress the obvious, and people even invert it. Need to see a bear about the woods, maybe implying an outdoor toilet.
Some animal ones get really elaborate, like back the bus out of the garage.
Or back the brown motorhome out. Yeah, those are more elaborate American jokes. The brown vehicle metaphor is pretty clear, if indirect.
And Australian. Drop a Grogan.
Right. Grogan being Aussie slang for a turd, maybe from 80s military slang.
Yeah.
You also hear snap off a Grogan, Pinch-a-grogan echoes pinch-a-loaf, adds that local flavor.
And we have to mention the childish terms. Poop and poo. Absolute staples.
Oh, yeah. Poop goes way back, 18th century baby talk, possibly onomatopoeic. Common U.S. term by early 1900s. British English often uses poo, maybe adopted more widely a bit later.
And all the others. Doo-doo, caca, number 2.
Dewey, BM, used childishly. They start with kids, but adults use them jokingly among themselves. Like dookie.
And Mr. Hanky, South Park really went there.
It did. Mr. Hanky the Christmas Poo embraced the childish term to satirize our squeamishness.
And the poop emoji now is everywhere.
A very visual sign of how this taboo subject enters everyday digital chat, often playfully.
Finally, the internet age. Just a flood of really creative, novel euphemisms. Those online lists are wild.
They really are. The internet's a hothouse for these over-the-top phrases. Launching a butt shuttle, birthing a creamy behemoth, massaging the mud snake.
Haha. They're deliberately absurd.
Totally. It's meta-playful. People invent them for the comedy, knowing the taboo they're skirting. The fact they're shared so openly online, that signals a real shift. Maybe less shame, more humor in informal digital spaces.
It's really interesting how context dictates everything with these humorous ones. Class, formality, audience.
That's hugely important.
Yeah.
Historically, working class groups, close friends, maybe allowed more directness or graphic slang. Soldier slang could be blunt or very creative. But in mixed or formal company, polite terms. A lot of slang starts in informal subcultures, often male-dominated ones. In media, 70s, 80s films, TV brought some of it mainstream, more bathroom humor, normalized things a bit.
But you still wouldn't use some of the wilder ones in a board meeting.
Absolutely not. Register and politeness norms persist. You code switch. There was maybe a historical gender dynamic, men using cruder terms, but that seems less rigid now, especially younger generations.
And the tone varies so much. Poop versus dump versus pinch a loaf.
Right. And slang can lose its euphemistic edge over time as it becomes common.
Okay, briefly on regional variations. Lots of overlap now, but still local flavors.
Definitely. Hollywood and the internet spread terms, but regional preferences remain. The U.S. contributed a lot of slang.
Yep.
Dump, deuce, loaf, those visual ones. And the preference for bathroom, restroom.
Yep.
The U.K. has spend a penny, loo, rhyming slang. Colloquialisms like bog for toilet, which is also used in Ireland and Australia. Ireland has the jacks, maybe slightly more directness with toilet day-to-day.
Canada
shares a lot of U.S. slang, but strongly prefers washroom. Australians have dunny, bondy cigar, adapt British terms, have their own like drop a grogan, maybe slightly less reservation with blunt terms sometimes.
But the core taboo, the humor that's shared, formality is the main difference.
Exactly.
And lastly, media and pop culture. How do these show up there? Often for laughs, right?
Mostly, yes. Literature used to avoid it. Modern lit can be frank, but euphemisms still pop up for characterization.
Yeah.
Even kids' books like Everybody Poops use a gentle title. Evolved hugely, from barely hinting at the bathroom in old sitcoms to South Park's open scatological humor subverting euphemisms. Animation allows for wild visual gags. Ads use them too now.
And film.
Subtle jokes in kids' movies, overt humor in comedies like Dumb and Dumber. Slang gets popularized in teen movies. Sometimes the euphemism itself is the joke or sets character tone.
So, wrapping up this deep dive, it's really clear how these euphemisms reflect shifting attitudes, tech, media, and just, well, linguistic creativity.
Absolutely. Formal language changed subtly, but the informal lexicon exploded thanks to media and the internet. But the basic driver is still that underlying taboo around a necessary function.
They really are like a social deodorizer, using politeness or humor to smooth things over. And it's fascinating how that shared need leads to both common ground and unique local terms across the English-speaking world.
And we see that euphemism treadmill constantly turning. Shit, crap, dump, yesterday's polite dodge becomes today's direct term, needing a new replacement.
It just highlights how dynamic euphemisms are, always responding to social change. And it really hammers home the importance of context, who you're talking to, where you are. It changes everything.
Precisely. It's all about skillful code shifting around those social boundaries.
So on that note, here's a final thought for you, the listener, to ponder. What new euphemisms might pop up in the future? How will the language we use for this keep evolving? Will it get even more creative or maybe swing back to being more understated?
Maybe we'll see even more visual metaphors from the digital world, or perhaps a reaction against the overt humor.
Only time, or maybe the next viral internet list, will tell. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.